Hello and welcome to this studio session of Sagar Manthan, the Great Oceans Dialogue. And we will be talking about blue carbon, the nature-based solutions for climate, communities, and capital. Mangroves, seagrasses, tidal marshes, and coral reefs, our blue carbon ecosystems, quietly do the heavy lifting. They are actually the unsung warriors in the fight against global climate action and global climate change. They absorb and store vast amounts of carbon dioxide. They protect coasts from erosion and storms and tsunamis, and they also support livelihoods for millions. Yet, these ecosystems remain undervalued and underfunded in many global climate finance frameworks, often not getting the due attention they deserve. The question, therefore, we need to answer is how research, governance, science and technology, and community stewardship can come together to unlock the true potential of blue carbon, not only for climate mitigation, but also for resilient economies and equitable growth. And to discuss this very important question or the challenge that confronts the entire world, joining me are two outstanding experts contributing to the global blue carbon agenda. Jayati Chauri from Saki Waters, who leads India chapter of the Global Mangrove Alliance, who's been instrumental in linking science, on-ground research, community engagement, and policy direction for nature-based climate solutions, especially for the conservation of mangrove ecosystems in the subcontinent. And I'm also delighted to invite Tom Pickerill, the Global Director of Ocean Program at the World Resources Institute, United Kingdom, bringing expertise in sustainable ocean governance, finance, and community-led conservation. Thank you both for being here. It's a great honor to have you on the show. Jayati, let's begin with you, and let's begin, I think, with a big picture. That blue carbon is now, I think, on the radar of most climate negotiations. It's also finding its way into climate agendas of nations. But it still somehow is struggling to find a consistent place when it comes to national action-oriented strategies. So from your experience, particularly in working with the enormous coastline of peninsular India, what's holding the full integration of blue carbon ecosystems, especially mangroves, which is your forte, into climate action frameworks, and how can that how can that gap be bridged? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dhavalji, for introducing me and for inviting
You
me.
can call me Dhaval, please.
Yeah, Dhaval, and for inviting me for this session. So I think we are at a very important moment, like right now, because blue carbon is finally on the radar, as you said, and we are so happy to see. We are glad to see that these overlooked ecosystems are now actually getting their recognition in because as you said that they help with carbon sequestration and up to 5 times more than your terrestrial forest.
Absolutely.
And then it's not just a mangrove, but also whenever we say mangrove, we also mean like other connected or associated ecosystems like sea grasses, salt marshes, and coral reefs. They all are interconnected. So I think integrating like this blue carbon in like your national like climate action plan, you actually need to do like a lot of groundwork before you actually formalize the whole thing. So for example, like your blue carbon ecosystems, mangroves, seagrass, and salt marshes need to be formally included, because right now we do talk about them, but they are not formally included in our NDCs or our biodiversity strategy and action plans. So
Correct.
the first step is to actually formally include them. And though like we see that for example, now we have this Mishti program for mangroves.
Yes.
That's a national level scheme. So like this kind of initiatives are welcome, but I personally feel that before, like while we agree that they should be part of your climate agenda, you need like a lot of preparedness, because
Right.
I think
Sure.
our nation is not prepared well, because without this kind of preparedness, your initiatives will not give you desired results. So, for example, when we say this mangroves, salt grasses, salt marshes, and seagrass, I hope like we have time because
No,
just
please,
indicate,
yeah.
yeah. So, what I feel that though, for example, we have now launched national level scheme, but at the same time we need to pause and see, are we prepared for launching this kind of scheme?
True.
Because see, this action agenda doesn't mean just planting mangroves. There's a
Right.
lot more should go
And I
into
think
this. Yeah.
if I can stop you there, and what eventually drives boils down to is on the estimating the value of what they represent in terms of
Yeah.
carbon absorption, and building on that, Tom, if our global policy instruments, maybe like the Paris Agreement and even the voluntary carbon markets, are they doing or are they evolving fast enough to really accurately value the ecosystems and the benefits that they offer? Or are we still treating blue carbon as something of a niche, more from a philanthropy angle in attracting private capital? So your views on this from your vantage position that you hold at WRI?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think we are still treating blue carbon as a niche. There has been increased recognition recently,
Right.
which is to be welcomed because, I mean, their importance shouldn't be up for debate. What is up for debate is on whether we're integrating them into the plans and governing them in a way that communities can truly experience. Right. So we do need to up the game considerably, and I think your point is absolutely right. They've got to be recognised.
Right.
Blue carbon ecosystems need to be explicitly included in the NDCs, the National Determined Contributions, long-term strategies, the national adaptation plans, for example. But not just that, we need to pair the mitigation of the challenges with other areas of coastal resilience and fisheries, disaster risk, food security, because that gives them tangible benefits. And I think clear signals like this, that this is a priority for us, can catalyze things like budget lines and private finance.
Right, thank you. So, and Jayati, you have worked extensively with coastal communities and local governments. And how do we ensure, therefore, that the benefits of blue carbon projects actually reach the people who are, in a sense, part of these ecosystems? Like, the fishers, as you rightly said, Tom, fishers, farmers, and the indigenous coastal communities. How can that transition happen?
Yeah. Dhaval, I think that's, yes, I would say that that's such an important question because we must understand that most blue carbon ecosystems are not empty landscapes.
Right.
Yeah. They are places where people live and work. And unless these communities benefit, these projects won't sustain.
Right.
Because that's the thing. So definitely we need to ensure the inclusion of local communities, and also not just local communities but also need to recognize their traditional ecological knowledge, because that's very important.
True.
Yeah,
Very
that's
true.
very important. So in such scenario, I would like to highlight that there are some frameworks or principles. For example, you have this high quality blue carbon HQBC principles, which are actually very important here as a reference. So this document specifically lays out the need for safeguards of both people and also nature.
Right.
So there are such kind of frameworks available, and we need to adhere to them. And I would like to mention that as you welcome this new carbon market, and you say that this carbon market or carbon credit programs have potential to benefit local communities, but
Right.
at the same time you need to be very careful, because this whole sector is opening up to new players. especially large market players.
Sure.
So you should ensure that communities, their traditional livelihoods, biodiversities are not sidelined.
Right.
So they have to be very ethically
Absolutely.
and
That's very
sustainably
critical.
planned.
Very critical a point. And Tom, likewise, WRI has also emphasized governance and equity. So what models or frameworks do you see working best to ensure a transparent benefit sharing while enhancing and maintaining this blue carbon ecosystems?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. And one of our sort of taglines is if the communities themselves aren't better off, then the project is not going to be high integrity.
Right.
So that's got to come first. So projects last when they're aligned with community priorities and customary governance. So we believe there's sort of 4 commitments that you should be doing in areas like this. Number 1 is rights first. So you need secure tenure and carbon rights. You've got to have free, prior and informed consents, or FPIC. That's an ongoing process, not just a tick the box exercise. And you've got to formalize co-management with the regulatory authority as well. So it has to be sort of led from within. The second one, we've got to involve local leaders in the project design and the budgeting and the monitoring. So, co-design, co-monitor, and co-benefit. Right. So that's the second part. The third one is Indigenous knowledge, which you mentioned. We've got to blend knowledge systems. We could pair remote sensing and field plots with Indigenous ecological knowledge, seasonal cues, species behaviours, traditional closures, things that are known on the ground. And that's really important. And that whole thing is becoming more mainstream now in the ocean space than just this area, which is an absolute delight to see. And the final one is invest in local communities and livelihoods and sort of the local capacity. Yes. Train local people in the technical skills they need. There's rangers, there's technicians. You compare carbon revenue that you get from these outcomes into diversified blue livelihoods. There's eco-restoration jobs, there's aquaculture, things that sort of benefit from the restoration and the protection. And we've done some research recently on the sort of transition to a sustainable blue economy. And there's potentially 50 million jobs available, globally. So it's a significant thing. And these are particularly valuable for communities that maybe don't have as many options as other areas as well. So some key things there, I think, that need to be done to make a project successful.
Absolutely. And looking at it from a smaller nation perspective, maybe in Europe, and given the vast landscape or the vast peninsular coastline that India has, a national framework might not be applicable everywhere because it needs to be tailored and customized to the local requirements. And I think that is where what you said becomes very important. And would you then really believe that there is a lot of effort to foster public-private partnerships in this area, but what is missing is, I think, a 4th P, and that is to make it a public-private people partnership. That when you get the people on board, then I think you get half the work done right there. So your thoughts, Jayati, and then you, please.
Yeah, so in fact, I would also like to add one more P, that is planet.
Oh, yes.
Because we must now recognize that they are equal, like nature or
Sure.
different, the creatures we have, they also have equal stake. So I think it should be 5 P's.
Right, sure.
Yeah. So definitely you said that involving local communities is very important.
And I think to customize or tailor-make solutions.
Tailor-made. So that's what I'll refer to this recent study by Wetlands International. So they say that 80% of mangrove restoration projects fail.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why they fail, because when you design this project, you don't actually consider local environment, context, people, or science. So that's why you invest in that, and then you do more damage than you benefit this. For example, I give you tell you an example of one big mangrove restoration project in India, where they have actually, because once all these national schemes are planned, or you have this carbon project, blue carbon project, so the like focus is on expanding area, counting numbers. So then you actually, then these projects actually tend to do like, they are well intended, but then they are not backed by proper scientific knowledge,
Correct.
research. So they end up planting trees maybe in salt marshes, because salt marshes, understanding of salt marshes is very limited. So you plant these mangrove trees in salt marshes area, in seagrasses area, or in mud flats. So you should know what are the natural areas. So that's the
There's a
like
mismatch to
indication.
begin with.
Yeah. So you need. So when we say capacity building or education, is not just the communities, but you need this kind of capacity building or education at each and every level, like starting from your policy makers, then your decision makers, practitioners, and communities.
Right.
And otherwise, you see these projects are doing more harm than like
Absolutely.
giving the
So
benefits.
your
Yeah.
thoughts?
I completely agree. I think there's many people who feel you just need to put seedlings into the mud and you're going to have a mangrove in a couple of years. And I think that's dangerous. And what it does is it lowers the credibility of good projects. And I think the only thing I would add is to what you said is we also need to consider the sort of the catchments as well, because a lot of the time the success of a restoration project can depend on what is coming from upstream downwards as well. But this is why planning is really important, and this is where the local knowledge comes in, because you're not just looking at a map and says, yeah, this is tidal, this will do. You're speaking to the experts who know the ground, who know the rivers. So it's incredibly important.
Absolutely. And I think this is what we are seeing exactly in terms of the Mithi River restoration, which has a lot of mangroves. It's a huge estuary that we have not too far from here. In fact, within walking distance from here.
And there are also gaps in knowledge, because very
Yes.
less research has been done in case of seagrass or salt marshes. Like majorly it is focused on mangroves. So, and then also first you need to understand what you want to conserve, then only you'll be able to conserve. So there's very less data. For example, mangrove species. So number of species which are reported ranges from 29 to 69. It's a like huge range. So you need to actually come up with the agreed methodology, standard, and then like provide data to the public, because there are like data information available, but it's not accessible. So
there's need for a mapping as well, because there's a lot of mangroves that have been lost in the 50s and the 60s that are not necessarily being recognized now, because we have that shifting baseline of there was a mangrove here 10 years ago. So I think there's a real opportunity here to do it could be a nationwide or a regional or even a global mapping of mangrove loss to pull it together, and that would actually feed into this informed decision making on where do we do the restoration, where would the restoration have the most impact. So that's certainly something I think is an opportunity for us.
And what would underpin or rather support all of what we discussed is finance. Every good idea would need money to implement. And Jayati, where do you see the greatest potential for aligning global climate finance and carbon markets? A lot of movement is done, but we are still not able to attract the kind of finance that would undergird or support some of these efforts.
Yeah, so I think like when it comes to carbon finance and all, like I'm not the expert, but still based on my own understanding and experience in the field, I think you need blended finance tools, not just one kind, because right now largely it's philanthropy or some CSR grants which come up with like very short-term goals, vision. But we need blended mechanisms, finance mechanisms, where you have these carbon market, because the carbon markets are, if they adhere to these principles, ethics and sustainability principles, they are actually a very good solution in long run, because they look at this project in quite long run, not limited. So I think we need all these blended.
And that exactly what would emanate into another question, and that is about whether carbon markets or the carbon credits are really the path forward, or do we need an entirely new kind of an innovative funding mechanism?
Yeah.
And I think you have done a lot of work in WRI in carbon finance or climate finance, broadly speaking.
Yeah, and I think carbon markets can fund protection and restoration if they meet some sort of high quality principles, and some of those principles include, that they actually safeguard nature.
Right.
So that's got to be a given. They empower people. As well, these are the local communities. They use the best available science, so they're not just done on what you think is the right thing to do. They're co-designed with local jobs, so this is the sort of the local action as well. And they actually mobilize high integrity capital. Right. And so by that we mean, there's transparent pricing and the proceeds are used accordingly. And one good example that's often given is community-led mangrove project in Kenya, in Mikoko Pamoja, which is the carbon credits there are used to fund schools and access to clean water.
Oh, wow.
As you can see how that's beneficial. But I mean, blended finance is an absolute given, but and for all the reasons you say, and that's got to be the way forward. But there's also a missing piece often is this early stage funding of the non-sexy bits. So this is the bits before you even go near the sort of the mud. And these are sort of technical assistance and grants for feasibility projects, for clarifying tenure, who's actually got the tenure rights here, and community capacity. These need to happen because if we don't get these elements early and right, then everything else is kind of built on sort of very uneven foundations. So that kind of seed funding is where you can really determine the success of a project as well. But to do all of that, you do need the governance architecture in place, which we mentioned.
Right. So thank you, Jayati and Tom. And this is one topic, as you rightly said at the beginning, or maybe even before we began this session, is that we can only scrape the top. Not even do that properly in 20 minutes. But I think thank you for this deeply insightful and fascinating discussion. So today's
I'll just add,
sure.
Share one information because it will be useful for audience also. Please. So when you were actually mentioning about need for mapping, I would like to share this, that Global Mangrove Alliance has this Global Mangrove Watch. So you can also refer to it. It's open access, and then they are mapping all the mangroves across the globe, and they also see what kind of annual losses you have in mangroves.
So is there a kind of a heat map that you can actually see?
You can see, it's an interactive map. So you can search for Global Mangrove Watch.
Yeah, we're doing some work with them in the Terra Fund.
Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah. Right. So I think today's discussion reminds us that blue carbon is not just about carbon, it is about connection. Connection between the climate and communities, finance and fairness, and science and stewardship. And as we look toward, we are coming to the end of the SDGs, but I'm sure there'll be a new beginning, and maybe another decade of decisive climate action. And blue carbon, I think there at that point, it gives us a rare opportunity to invest in nature, while empowering the people who really need it the most, the people who are on the coasts. So thank you both for joining us, and thank you all for tuning into this edition of the studio session of Sagar Manthan, the Great Oceans Dialogue.